Hello, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And I would love to speak in French, but I cannot. So, my name is Adam Przywara, and as Maria said, I'm an architecture historian and a curator. And what I will present to you concerns a project which I'm developing now into a book, which is concerned with circular reconstruction. So how practices of reuse, recycling emerge in the conditions of post-war reconstruction. And to just give you some context, I will refer to this quote by Walter Stachel, one of the leading figures in conceptualization of circular economy. Quote, "Early men had to cope with whatever resources were available and could be used as or transformed into shelter, food, products, or tools. Circularity was a necessity for most. Only the rich and mighty lived in a relative comfort. More than 200 years ago, the Industrial Revolution enabled society to overcome scarcities of shelter, food, and objects. These new energies enabled mass production of anything and turned scarcity first into plenty, then abundance, and then plethora of waste." And so what you see here on the slide is a graphic showing how plaster was, we are talking about plaster here, so how plaster was recycled actually in Paris in the 18th century. But on those practices, we have not very much of historical information. Only recently, we started together with colleagues from Belgium, you might know them from Rotor. We started to map these histories. And if you want to learn more, you can go, this is a movie, yeah. Yes. You can go to IFLAX, and we recently collaborated with Charles Jenks Foundation and the IFLAX to produce this chronogram of circular architecture, which gives you an idea of the wealth of histories which can inspire you to reuse, recycle, and base your projects on. There are also bio-based materials. But today I will talk specifically about what you see here, 1940s in Europe. And so now we will move to Warsaw, capital city of Poland, in the first months and years after 17th January 1945, so Second World War. Writer and literary critic Kazimierz Wyka and an artist, painter Mieczysław Jurgielewicz were among the first people, inhabitants, professionals, soldiers to come back to Warsaw after 6 years of German occupation. And in his memoir, Wyka noted something striking, quote, "I am facing a completely new phenomenon of nature, a phenomenon never seen before." So what Wyka described was actually that the destruction, the violence of the occupation, the urbicide, has destroyed the city and has produced an environment, an alien environment. And that environment was defined, you haven't seen it. This is the painting. And this environment, as I said, was defined by the violence of 6 years of occupation and planned destruction. About 15,000 buildings were destroyed to a different extent. This is a map, an assessment of damage and destruction done by architects coming back to the city and going from building to building, assigning them with a level of destruction. As you see in the front of in the central part of this map, there is an area of Jewish ghetto which was destroyed to the extent that no buildings remained. And this area looked like this, and this photo also shows you that this was an unprecedented destruction which left only mountains of rubble, as Wyka described, mountains of rubble behind. And it created a new challenge for architects and for administration and for people coming back to the city, how to inhabit those ruins, how to live in them. And one of the things or materials which violence produced was rubble, which you see here visualized on the contemporary skyline of Warsaw. There was around 25 million cubic meters of rubble covering the city streets, pavements, build-up plots. To give you an idea, in Europe, so we talk Central Eastern Europe, Poland, Germany, Soviet Union, there was around 1.4 billion tons of rubble after 6 years of war, and contemporary building industry in the EU, so peacetime industry, we are not talking about Ukraine, produces this amount of construction and demolition waste every 2 years. So this gives you some idea of a scale of a problem which we are dealing with now. And so how they dealt with it in the post-war Warsaw. So here you can see first, these photos were made in April 1945. They were made by, they depict women, because you need to remember the Second World War did not end yet. Men who survived the war were coming back much later to the city. And here, those women try to survive in the ruins, and this is their daily practice of coming into the ruins and salvaging materials which can be used for fuel, specifically pieces of doors, pieces of interiors being used in the ovens. And this kind of very grassroots movement of salvaging the city has been transformed by the municipality, which started to organize so-called work brigades, which in May 1945 employed around 15,000 people, around 80% women. And those women were engaged in clearing the rubble from the city to actually start the reconstruction process. But this clearing, as we see on this photo, was not about moving it outside of out of the street, out of the way, but actually it was about recovering materials which can be used for the reconstruction. And this led to conceptualization of rubble as a building material in the offices in the administration, specifically in the office responsible for design of reconstruction of Warsaw Reconstruction Office. And their architects started to exactly formalize this circular economy. And one good example is, excuse me. This is the photo of salvaging. Then this is how architects formalized it in these diagrams. And finally, the good example of how this was done was, for example, the director of Warsaw Reconstruction Office, an architect, avant-garde architect, modernist. He engaged, Roman Piotrowski, he engaged for the first time, architects started to seriously engage with a process of demolition. And in his report written in 1946, he suggested that the demolitions commissioned by the city, by the government, should be organized not in a time-efficient way, but actually should be organized in material-efficient way and should recover the most bricks possible. Because actually, at the time, the scarcity of bricks started to be palpable across the country, and the state, the administration, started to realize that there will be not enough bricks to reconstruct the country. So they started organizing so-called winter action of demolition, which reached quite huge proportions of until 1949, December 1949, they recovered around 500 million bricks, so 500 million bricks. And as you see in this very precise document, we deal here with a communist government, very kind of bureaucracy. They actually these documents that majority of the bricks came from the cities in so-called recovered territories, so cities which were transferred to Poland from Germany as an outcome of Yalta and Potsdam agreements. And in those cities, indeed, the process of recovering the bricks reached unprecedented levels. So to quote someone describing this, quote, "The brick recovery operation was carried out in 1949 in the area of approximately 1,400 build-up plots with a length of street front totaling approximately 35 kilometers. So what they were doing there was demolishing ruins and recovering the bricks in order to fuel the state-led reconstruction in Poland. And those bricks were then transported on trains into the so-called old territories like Warsaw, which we can see here on the slide, storage of bricks in Warsaw. And they were used for renovations, mainly for renovations, but they were also mixed with new types of materials which started to be developed. And they were started to be developed on the basis of scientific approach to materials. So we are not talking about experience, skills, and craft, but rather a new type of building research, building science, which started to emerge in the post-war Warsaw. This is a diagram showing you what engineers from the Building Research Institute in Warsaw focused on. So rubble, which couldn't be reused immediately, it could be used in a mix, in a concrete mix. We have seen today a lot of such materials. And so they were not able to develop the technology themselves because there was not enough infrastructure, scientific infrastructure, and instead they actually traveled to Germany. 1947, German generals are still sentenced to death in Warsaw. They are traveling to Germany, exchanging with German engineers in order to understand how rubble can be recycled. And one of the things they learned was that in order to recycle, they need machines which were brought to Warsaw from Switzerland, from companies which are still existing. Schindler is the company producing elevators. And those companies provided this kind of aggregate machines for production of a new type of building material, which you see the production line here. So rubble starts to be rubble is taken from the ruins, it's crushed, it's sorted, it's mixed with concrete and water, and then produces concrete blocks, rubble concrete blocks. And so this was a new material, a substitute for a traditional brick. Traditional brick and timber were the basic materials in the pre-war Warsaw. And in the post-war Warsaw, those industries were totally destroyed. And so this new material provided a substitute. A substitute completely experimental. No one knew how it will behave, but it was almost immediately introduced into construction. And this is an amazing, I love this photo because it kind of shows you also this political meaning of that moment, because rubble concrete started to be almost immediately used in the buildings commissioned by the state, specifically by the communist parts of the state, who argued that this is a symbol of frugality, of efficiency, of planned economy, command economy. And this photo shows that. I mean, the transformation. So they demolish ruins of tenement houses, something which communists hated, and build from the rubble of those tenement houses a new buildings. Here it's Ministry of Industry and Trade, but also there was the leading figures of the Siam, Helena and Szymon Syrkuses, friends of Corbusier, Gropius, they were also building at the time from rubble concrete. This is a co-housing estate built for a cooperative in Warsaw. And finally, this is the final example. Just for you to see here, it's like an open prefabrication site on the construction site of the estate. So you have like a prefab site producing bricks for that estate. And finally, we come back to the area of the Jewish ghetto in Warsaw, which might follow for several years. And only in 1949, a new project started to emerge. A project designed by Bogdan Lachert, an architect, modernist but quite conservative, who suggested that the estate built on that site should be also a monument, so should have two specific functions. He, in order to develop that monumental function, he referred to the color of the rubble concrete, which had this specific kind of, salmony or like color like a flesh. And if you look at this photo, it's black and white, but you can imagine that these buildings, the facades were bare, those bricks were made of rubble concrete. Those buildings had this kind of very specific type of color, which Lachert said represents the blood spilled in Warsaw during the Second World War. And on that remark, I will finish, and I'm happy also to discuss further. There's a lot to say about this. Thank you.